Hi! This time I wanted to talk about what I consider to be the right attitude when playing solo role playing games. This is just my opinion, my personal take on things. I'm sure plenty of you will have your own methodology, your particular enthusiasm to enjoy that aspect of role playing games. So I invite you from the very start that if you have things that you could add to what I said, or maybe you disagree with some things that I comment on this video, mm, yes, that you write down in the comment section that you think, oh, well, I handle these things in this way or in that way, or I agree with this, I disagree with that, etc. Okay, I think one very important thing when it comes to running a solo role playing game is not to fool yourself or to trick yourself into the concept that a solo role playing game is going to be the same as a traditional RPG experience with your group. I think that is one major obstacle that if people do not get past that, mm, it's going to put a damper throughout the entire experience. It's going to feel perhaps even pointless. So, for example, many players take on the solo experience and they think, well, these tables are not good. I'm just asking questions. I don't know the right combination of oracles and tables, and many of those things have to do with some, let's say, some voice at the back of their head telling them that they could be enjoying that role playing game with other people. So it's better to accept things from the very start. So, for example, your group doesn't want to play a particular role playing game, maybe it's quite niche or somewhat unorthodox in its theme, in its story, in its rules, and they do not want to play it. And it's also difficult to find people to play it online. Maybe some people simply are not interested in that. So you need to accept that it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, considering the current circumstances. Maybe in a few months or in a few years it will be possible, but you need to accept that at the present time it is not possible. So you can either just wait for your group to finally play that game, or for another group to appear, other people that want to play that game. Perhaps they will never come, and perhaps your group will never want to play that role playing game, and it's just going to sit there on your shelf or in your computer without, if you own the PDF, it's never going to be played and you will never get to enjoy that experience. There are some other ways to enjoy role playing games, like, for example, maybe you like reading about the story and the characters and the rules, but in my opinion, it's much better to play the game, to actually play it. So yes, it's better if you accept right away that maybe you will never get to play it unless you play it using solo rules. Another good thing when it comes to playing a solo RPG is that everything that you prepare beforehand for many sessions ahead is going to, how would you call it, improve the flow of the experience. So, for example, maybe you are ready to play your RPG, your solo RPG, and you're like, oh no, this is going to be so much trouble. I'm feeling quite lazy because I need to bring out the books and my notes, and I need to open the files. So from the very start, I would recommend that you have everything ready in one place. If you have several books for a solo RPG, maybe you are playing any edition of Dungeons and Dragons, have a place in your shelf or in your desk, your table that you are using to play the game, where you have the three books, the player's handbook, monster manual, etc. And also you have your folder with all of your, or a notebook or whatever, with all of your campaign notes. And if you are using things digitally, you need to prepare those files in a single place. Like, I have a folder where I call it like the solo material or something, and I double click and it all opens. Mm, So yes, anything that you can do to speed up things is going to help you tremendously when it comes to eliminating that tedium, that lack of enthusiasm that you're always going to be thinking, oh no, I'm going to play a solo RPG, I need to prepare everything, but perhaps you just, like I said, you pull out your, maybe you keep everything in a small box, or in, like I said, in a spot in in your desk, or with the computer. You just need to double click and everything. The file opens, or rather the folder with the files, it opens and you have everything ready. So you need to consider that, because I think that many become discouraged because just thinking ahead of all of the things that they have to prepare to run that solo RPG session, let alone a campaign. Another thing is that you need to consider this solo time, solo RPG time, as a way to express some love to yourself, like some quality quality time with yourself. Because maybe some people could feel a bit discouraged that, oh, I have to prepare all of this and read all of this beforehand. And for example, maybe you are using Abraham's method. Remember that the link will be in the description below if you want to emulate player characters, if you want to run a game as a solo game master, and you are thinking, well, it doesn't get me excited because I prefer preparing things for my players. But if you take into consideration that you are dedicating that time to yourself, I am sure you will appreciate it. That is, I think that a part of you is going to enjoy that attention, that you are putting this effort to please yourself. Mm. And then I want to move on to the power of imagination. This is extremely important. Everything that you can do to feel immersed, to feel within that fictional environment, is going to result in an excellent session. I've talked a bit about this in several videos. I have mentioned that you could use music if you enjoy that. I've actually, sometimes I'm in the mood for music, and other times I just want to keep things still, like this, with no sound. And I imagine those sounds by myself. I usually use music when I want a more cinematic experience. That is, I feel like as if I am participating in a movie or in some sort of anime or something, or a TV series. But it depends on my mood. Or maybe you want to add atmospheric sounds. If that gets you into the game, if that enhances that immersion, definitely go for it. If you like using miniatures, and throughout the years I have heard people that sometimes they enjoy using miniatures, sometimes they do not. Other people, they say that they cannot feel immersed unless they avoid miniatures altogether. That is, not using miniatures at all, using just a few maps. Otherwise they do not feel immersed and in a sort of theater of the mind style. But for me, it is completely, I wouldn't say the opposite, but miniatures actually enhance the immersion for me. Because when I use miniatures, and maybe this has to do with my philosophical background, but I actually feel as if my conscience is being transferred into the miniature. And I look at the map, at the battle grid, at the miniatures of the enemies, and yes, it's kind of like you are looking at things from the perspective or the angle of the miniature, kind of like in war games, that when you need to confirm line of sight, you need to lower yourself to on the table to see if the model spots the enemy model. It's kind of like that, but you're not physically lowering your head to see the world through the eyes of the miniature. You are, like I said, it's almost like sending your awareness to inhabit the miniature, and you feel like, oh yeah, I'm actually there. And you imagine things to the point that you actually think, or just trick yourself into thinking that the miniatures, the enemies, the non-player characters, they actually move with each action. So that's the way that I enjoy immersion when it comes to using miniatures. And I understand why some people have those like 3D map tiles and pieces, like from what's the name, Dwarven Forge, all of those 3D. And because nowadays 3D printers are quite popular, a lot of gamers print out those 3D pieces of the dungeon map and the wilderness and all of that. And it's because that way it's a way to support that immersion. I think maybe those players also experience things like me, that there comes a moment during the game where their awareness, their consciousness kind of like travels into the plastic miniature or metal miniature, and they start to see the world through the eyes of the miniature, and that static world that seems completely still suddenly comes alive in their minds. So definitely identify if you feel more immersed into the experience without using those tools, or if those tools actually enhance the experience, go for it. So yes, as you can see, this attitude, it can be a bit complex or deep depending on the things that you use to feel immersed into the experience, to feel really into the game. I think that is incredibly important, and not only for solo role-playing games. Imagination is so important, and the ability to feel as if you are actually there. That's why video games simply cannot fill that spot, and I still enjoy many video games, but I play video games when I want that. I appreciate the expression of video games combining graphics and sounds and gameplay, but when I want to feel as if I am actually there, not just holding a controller, moving my mouse, or typing on the keyboard, I go for role-playing games. It's simply, maybe that's the reason why some people think that yes, that they do not enjoy tabletop role-playing games, because they have never experienced that moment where your senses are tricked or fall into that illusion, that amazing illusion that you are actually within that fictional setting, you are actually living the adventure. And I cannot, even in the best video games with the most awesome graphics and sounds and all of that, there is simply no comparison. Just as you are sitting right now in your computer, just touch the table in front of you, your keyboard, there is a moment where you actually feel that in a role-playing game, when you actually accomplish that perfect, how would you say, it's sort of like a projection. If you were to handle things like philosophically, it could be a sort of, not exactly an astral projection, but just like a projection into this fictional reality. And I think we should all, in my opinion, in my personal opinion, we should all strive to accomplish that, to the moment that even if you are rolling dice, even if you are writing things, those moments feel so insignificant compared to the actual experience of being there in that fictional environment. So yes, that's just my somewhat of a brief take on the attitude that you need to take when playing solo role-playing games. Definitely identify that thing that is keeping you from enjoying the game. Maybe you're playing and, oh, this is too boring, or this doesn't is not exciting for me. Try to pinpoint why that is happening. Maybe there is a rule that you do not like. Maybe, like I said, you find it a bit tedious or cumbersome to be preparing things for each session. Try to find a way to speed up or smooth things out when it comes to the preparation. Anything that you can do before starting the session is going to save you a lot of trouble later on if you want to keep a steady flow. In my case, it depends. Like I said, I have everything in a folder, and I just double click it, and everything opens up, and I just open the core rulebook and the setting and any additional files that I am using. But sometimes, like, the adventure requires for me to generate some enemies. I have no problem generating them, that is interrupting the session to create those enemies and then fighting them. Or maybe there is an enemy and I don't have the book available, and I just get up and take the book and write down the stats. I also don't mind that, but maybe some of you do, so I recommend that you prepare that beforehand, definitely. So yes, I also encourage you, as I mentioned in the beginning, that you please write down some thoughts and opinions on your personal take on what is the correct attitude for a solo RPG session, at least when it comes to your particular case, to your enjoyment. That way we can all benefit from those finer points. So thank you for watching this video. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that have been supporting the channel by sending drive-thru RPG gift certificates. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. Once again, thank you and see you later.